Hey, Jordan.
Hello.
I saw your message on Slack and I literally just like a minute or two just messaged you back.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
I'm not on the Slack. I have like 10 different Slack communities I'm part of, and it's hard to make my rounds.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fine. It's
But
fine.
happy to explore this question with you for sure.
Cool. Yeah. Should we wait till
Yeah, let's let folks
your
trickle in
turn?
here a minute. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you're on mute.
The classic Zoom response. You're on mute. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Very
We'll let
good.
some folks trickle in here. Ryan, I think you're first timer, yeah?
That's correct. Yes. In fact, I believe you had a USC get together with my friend John Barraclaw, who referred
That's
me to
right.
you. So yeah,
Yeah. John was a real pleasure to talk with, man. Like,
it is.
that's a classic example of just going to this networking event and getting to meet like one really interesting person and just going deep. Like I'd much rather do that than like chit chat with 30 different people and not walk away with really nothing.
Of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. John's led a very interesting life. He's been a mentor of mine and a good friend for a long time. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
he recommended. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess by way of quick introduction here. So, Jordan, I assume that you were coming in through the Never Search Alone community, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so Ryan, if you're not familiar, the NeverSearchAlone community is this what I found to be a really cool community of sort of self-organizing peer groups of peer job seekers. It's an organization that I've been part of, and I was moderating two job search councils, which are what they call the basically these small peer groups of job seekers, 4 to 6 people, and now the community is, excuse me, I want to say the community is like, I don't know, over 10,000 people
Hmm.
to look at the Slack group, but when I joined, it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3,000 people. So it's grown quite a bit. Anyway, I'm no longer actively moderating any peer groups. I get a lot of folks reaching out to me to kind of, schedule some time, and it's difficult. So I just do this on a weekly basis just to address any questions and discuss any scenarios people might encounter. And ultimately, my intent is to bring a recruiter's perspective in the thought that it'll help you navigate your job search, your career search, or whatnot. So I've been recruiting now since 2013, primarily for venture-backed companies. And then in a prior life, I was in software, product development, product management. And then in a former life, I was in engineering, mechanical engineering. So I've had some pivots in my career. So anyway, we'll just let folks come in as they please, and they just missed out on my lovely intro here. But um, happy to address any questions you might have. Hi, Divya. You missed out on my awesome intro, but
Hi.
you're good. You're good. So basically, the way we're going to structure this, I just have about 30 minutes, and if you guys have any questions about recruiting or anything about your job search that my perspective as a recruiter might benefit, happy to discuss it. I do this every week, and it's sort of a largely unstructured, ask me anything kind of deal. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I can tell you I have a recruiter's perspective. And sometimes that's, one of the biggest not to go off on a tangent here, but one of the biggest missed opportunities in navigating your job search is really developing a partnership and developing an ally out of the recruiter or recruiters that you're working with. And so I can give you some of that perspective on what's interesting, what, examples of where people have really partnered with me in the past and how they really turned me into an advocate of theirs, right, as part of the process. And so anyway, whatever questions or anything you just want to talk about, happy to explore.
Sure. Sure. So if everyone's okay, I'll go first. So Uh, I am kind of dipping into this for the first time. I've been helping my current company grow, and we've grown very large. And so for the last 7 8 years, I have been very secure in what's in my career, what's going on. So now it's starting to branch out, and I'm very curious what's available, how this all operates, and direct question to kind of start off with, Eric. I was very curious. Today, I am noticing that when I'm having conversations with other people and, my MBA friends or those from other organizations, there seems to be a large focus on what have you done? Meaning, show me the product, show me the service, the dashboard, the Power BI, the tracking system, whatever it might be, whatever you've created, you're directly responsible for creating. We would like to see some examples of that. And I'm curious what your experience is in how do we I have a fair amount of that. I'm curious, how do we put a portfolio together for a recruiter, for other people in a way that you've seen work very well?
So just so I have a little bit more context, what kind of function are you in? Product management, design?
Yeah, yeah. So I do product management. So I'm director of investment operations for a real estate investment trust, but also I am VP level, but we call it director. However, it's product design and implementation, right? So
Yeah.
I create it, I design it, but all the operations that go along with managing it, that's my job. So there's
Okay.
been a great deal of creation in my areas in terms of assets for the company, application sources, boards, Power BI, even a couple of AI agents and things that my team has done. And so
Okay.
there's a couple of things. So whatever that might be for anyone here, I'm curious how we present that. What do we do? What do we do with all?
Yeah. So, just to step back for a minute, you know, I would venture to say that all of you have a resume, right? I would venture to say that less than half of you probably have what I refer to as a CV, which is sort of an exhaustive record of your professional, academic, even personal experience. That CV and the way I would recommend you maintain a CV is a near exhaustive account of your personal, professional, academic experience. It's not outward facing. It's just a record of all your experience. And from that, you can kind of tease out different narratives, different stories, different resumes, different derivative artifacts as you navigate your job search, as you market yourself, as you even go for an internal promotion, right? So I would say that maintain that document, and you can start to tease out these derivative stuff, as needed. And I think one of those derivative things that sort of bring a story or narrative to life is that portfolio, right? Because portfolios, ideally, they're demonstrating concrete examples of your work, and they really bring to life the narrative that you're telling, whatever the narrative may be, right? It may be a narrative for a job interview, it may be a narrative for raising money, maybe a narrative for getting an internal promotion, right? And so the portfolio, I think, could augment or it could augment or be a part of that CV that you're maintaining. But from a recruiter's perspective, it really brings those things to life, right? Because it's easy for people to talk about stuff, but when you can show them images, pictures, videos, URLs to landing pages, whatever, it really brings to life what you've worked on, right? And it adds more credibility to what you worked on. Does that help? And so from a recruiter's perspective, it's helpful.
Yeah, it does. So, and then navigating with, since most of what I built is owned by our company, of course, and so the API and of course the access is open for me. But then the best way to share that with outside companies, of course, I'm familiar with redacting client information or personal company for when it comes to like a demonstration. Like, for instance, I have noticed that as I talk to a lot of people, and especially my friends in higher levels of, they're like, hey, something interactive to your point with a CV, something that's interactive, right? And so, like you were mentioning, a landing page or something like that. So, do you recommend then, with all of this data that we're maintaining, these examples, these videos, whatever it might be, would you recommend it to build your own website, keep it there, and kind of house it, or how would someone go about housing all of this storytelling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've seen people do that before, and I've found it to be effective if it's clean.
Exactly. Okay.
Because some of these websites that people put together, they're sort of general websites, and you can get lost navigating to whatever, right? And so I don't know if you do that with a subdomain or just a specific whatever, but as long as it's easy to get to and navigate, and I know what I'm looking for, and even maybe what I'm looking for is maybe hyper personalized to me as the particular recruiter for the particular position that you're looking for, right? If there's a way to, I don't know, again, carve out a specific URL or subdomain with a portfolio that's personalized for that particular interview, that interviewer, or that particular role or that company, I think that could be quite nice. It's rare that it's just to, again, part of the value you can add here is I can tell you what people do and what people don't. It's rare that people do this. So you will stick out, and I think in a positive way if you do it well.
Gotcha. So direct to the point, and I've noticed this too as I've hired a bunch of people with this very same demonstrations that it's a lot of information, but
Yeah.
it sounds like it's targeted to your specific person, the specific company, the specific role, and so don't just give them the same thing. Target it and change it based on who you were about to share this.
I would, especially now, right? With GPT, it's so easy to like hyper personalize stuff if you give it the right context.
Mhm.
You're interviewing with this company, with this person. for this job with this JD, pull out the relevant pieces of my resume or LinkedIn profile or CV that you think are more would most resonate with this person.
Yeah.
Give me the top 3 examples. Okay, from those 3 examples, let's tell a story about it and create some sort of artifact that could be put into a portfolio specifically for this person. And you can have GPT write a little story, a little narrative, throw it into 11 Labs, have it narrate it. You can create like a video. I mean, there's like video, you've seen those videos, right? Where they're like writing on a whiteboard or something like that. Like you can do stuff like that now really easily. You do it the first time, it's hard, right? You try to figure out how to piece stuff together. But once you do it once, man, you can just keep doing it. And now you can hyper personalize it for each job you're interviewing with, right? And so I'm telling you, people don't do this. They don't. So you'll stick out. And I think a good way, especially if it's super personalized. And the overhead for personalizing stuff now is quite low, right? It's because, yeah, you have all this help now with these tools out there.
Makes sense. And then as an introduction, when you're personalizing, how often do you see videos? Like I can do a quick loop video, right?
Yeah.
5-minute introduction showing a couple of things. And I like the fact that on loop, you could have the whiteboard, you can write a couple of things, you can highlight a few things. How often do you see that?
It's rare. It's rare.
Okay. So if you do it, that would be a good thing.
I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if it's personalized, right? I mean, you personalize to the company, you can personalize to the job description, you can personalize to the person you're talking to, right? If you're talking to that VP of whatever, right? Like if you can personalize the stuff that you believe will resonate with that person, or maybe you'll get some insight to the from the recruiter. And that's another reason to figure out how you can develop a good relationship with the recruiter, is because as you do that, they can give you insights that can really be helpful, right? They can give you insights, say, oh, you're going to talk to Sam, the VP of whatever. And, you look up his LinkedIn profile and it's like, now you can start to personalize stuff to Sam, right? And, yeah. So it's rare that people are doing that. I think people will start to do that more as, people have to get more creative, right? But for now, like, if you do it, I think you'll stand out.
Okay. Yeah. I see that too. When I hire people, if anyone does anything out of the ordinary beyond just giving a resume, I'm like, somebody that's willing to go the extra mile, a diligent person,
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, that makes sense.
The other thing too is it demonstrates your use. I think, right? I think having AI skills and basic prompting skills and how do you create a custom GPT and how do you string these little tools together in a creative way? I think that skill is, regardless of what function you're in, is going to be highly valuable. And if you demonstrate that as part of the interview process in terms of marketing, showcasing your experience, I think I think you'll stick out. Because I think people are they're using ChatGPT and these AI tools, I would say, in a fairly primitive way, and if you start to use it in more of the other thing too that I recommend is I think about, in your craft, in your profession, your role, your discipline, how how have you maybe integrated AI to help you, one, increase your capability, but also increase your capacity, right? Because if you can, I think the astute companies and the astute employers will start to be curious about that because,
So,
yeah,
regardless of the role you're about to fill, all of those, all of that technology interface is absolutely necessary to a valuable, productive individual, no matter what role you're in.
I think so. And if you can weave that into your conversation, your interview, I think you will stick out.
Agreed. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to
Um,
monopolize my time there.
No,
yeah,
these are great questions. I appreciate it.
I had a rather specific question, and also a more general question after that. Yeah, so I am doing this NeverSearchAlone process, and part of the process is to reach out to recruiters, and you ask them a series of questions in terms of, like, based on my current resume, like, what jobs do you think I could get easily? What jobs would be a stretch? So I'm sort of wondering what's the best way to approach that. Because I was in the session last week and you said when you're reaching out to a recruiter, you kind of don't want to begin with an ask, right? It's kind of a bad way to start things off. So I'm just wondering how would I approach contacting a recruiter and getting them to, because I do need them to answer those questions for me, right? But I don't
Yeah.
want to, I want to actually get and I don't really have any existing relationships with recruiters at the moment, which is the other difficult thing.
Yeah.
Hey, am
Yeah.
I the only one who lost Jordan's voice?
No, I can hear Jordan. Divya, can you hear us?
Okay. I probably, something is going on. My mouse is acting up. Everything is acting up. So sorry. I only heard partially, but that's okay. Based on Eric's answer, I'll probably reverse engineer Jordan's question.
You can hear me though, right, Divya?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was
okay.
able to hear you all along. I think
Okay.
halfway through, I lost Jordan.
Okay. So, Jordan, my understanding of your question is, as part of the NeverSearchAlone community, there's a part of the playbook where you're sort of tasked with reaching out to recruiters and asking, I think it's a standard a set of 3 questions. And really the intent of those questions is to get an understanding of, how your experience would be perceived in the marketplace in terms of mapping it to a particular role or title, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So one, it's hard to get a hold of recruiters unless they're actively like trying to connect with you or recruit you for a particular position. It's hard because a lot of them are being asked. So part of my answer here is to set expectations a little bit, to temper your expectations so you're not banging your head against the wall, right? That's the last thing you want to do. Recruiters are being tasked now more than ever to do more with less. Part of that is budgets. Part of that is just, companies slimming down. Part of that is AI. Part of that, I mean, there's a lot of different forces that are making that the case, right? So when a recruiter doesn't respond back to you, just know that there's a lot of stuff going on that person's plate, likely, and they're not actively trying to ignore you, right? So that's one. The other piece is that a lot of times, unless you're particularly relevant to you, I mean, your resume, your candidacy is particularly relevant to immediate searches that they're trying to fill, chances are they will not engage with you. So if you reach out to them on LinkedIn, if you email them, even if you call them or text them, somehow if you get their phone number, they probably won't engage with you unless they know that your candidacy, your experience, your LinkedIn profile, resume is relevant to a particular position that they're actively working on. So that's another thing. And I know this is for future, but a lot of times recruiters will reach out to you when you're gainfully and happily employed. And I would highly recommend if they reach out to you, take the call, if nothing else for your own future networking and relationship building. I've been through a lot of cycles now over the past, since 2013, where it goes from an employer market to an employee market and back and forth, right? Right now, it's very much an employer's market. Employers are calling the shots because there's abundance of great talent out there, and there's just a shortage of particular, and there's a shortage of roles. So the leverage is really on the hiring side right now. So that's one other thing. What I mentioned earlier in terms of last week about leading with value. Well, before I talk about that, what you're ultimately trying to do with that question is you're trying to just get some feedback from the market, assuming that the recruiter represents the market, sort of the eyes and ears of the marketplace, of the employer marketplace, of where your experience lines up with respect to sort of title, right? Are you a senior designer, a mid-level designer, or like a junior designer, right? And you're trying to, here's my experience, recruiter. Tell me in your eyes, where would you see me fitting? And so that's really what you're trying to get at, right? One thing that you might be able to use as sort of a proxy for a recruiter, because oftentimes recruiters are hard to get a hold of unless they're actively seeking you, is people that are just in your network, that are in your line of work, and just ask them what their thoughts are. You could use that as a proxy, and the NeverSearchAlone community could be good for that too, right? So I guess the point is, I wouldn't make it too much of a hang up. I know that Phil prescribes that step as part of the process. You can also you can use Perplexity as a proxy too for a recruiter, right? The other thing too is like not all recruiters are the same, right? Because if you're reaching out to a recruiter, like if you're a designer, that has historically worked for Series B level venture-backed startups, venture-backed companies, there's a certain set of recruiters that are familiar with that space and with that discipline within that space, right? And so not all recruiters will be able to comment or provide you with meaningful insight. So, so even reaching out to the recruiter, like you have to make sure it's the right kind of recruiter, right? By industry, by domain, by maybe less so, but geography too, though, right? Ideally, you're reaching out to a recruiter that's operating in a geography that is relevant to you. If you're on the West Coast, I don't know how much somebody on the East Coast can help you if you're looking on the West Coast, for example, right? And then I guess just to, sort of just reiterate the whole leading with value thing. Even if you do lead with value, you're not guaranteed that the person's going to respond. You're taking a best guess at what might be interesting to the recruiter. I think to your question in Slack earlier, having a good sense of what recruiters are interested in. First and foremost, recruiters are interested in filling their positions, right? If you don't have the experience or if you don't fit the candidate, if you're not a potential candidate for one of their requisitions, chances are they're not going to prioritize a conversation with you, right? So they're very interested in filling their immediate requisitions. Number two, depending on their seniority, if they're responsible if they're responsible for filling positions, in addition, if they're responsible for soliciting new business or new requisitions, in addition to filling the existing positions, that is something that typically more senior recruiters are on the hook for. But then that's something that you might be able to speak to as well. So if you could dangle that carrot in front of them in terms of like maybe leveraging your network, or maybe there's a client that you work for that might be hiring, or something like that, that would get a recruiter's ears perked up. And particularly, I mean, junior recruiters, probably not, because junior recruiters are not really on the hook for soliciting new business. But if they're a full desk recruiter and they are filling their positions, but they're also looking for new positions to fill, that could be something that's very interesting to them. So filling their current positions, getting new positions to recruit for, and then maybe third is just sort of getting more exposure, right? Which would aid in the first two. Right. And what I mean by exposure is like if you give them a platform to share their expertise, to get a group together that could be a source for potential hires or for potential clients, that would be valuable to them. Those are the top three things that I would imagine would be very valuable to me as a recruiter. And if you start dangling or even alluding to that stuff, you're going to stick out.
Okay.
Maybe the fourth.
Okay.
Maybe the fourth that you could dangle, if you have this, is just a mutual relationship. So if you know somebody that knows that person, you can drop that name, right?
Right.
But if it's just a cold outreach with an ask, the probability, I would say, is pretty low that they'll respond in a meaningful way or a meaningful time frame.
Yeah. And I understand that, of course.
Divya, your audio is breaking up. You could try turning your video off. Maybe that'll help. I don't know if it's a bandwidth issue or what.
Could be. Last few days we are
There you
having.
go.
There we go.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Nice. So
Max heads.
is it back to breaking up now?
It was. Give it another try. Try it again.
Hello?
I'm here.
Okay. So if you received a resume cold, let's say on LinkedIn, would you even look at or no?
So here's the thing, right? Like you have to know that recruiters get inundated with a lot of inbound. So it might not even be a choice I'm actively even presented with, if that makes any sense. Because I have so many inbound, because I have so many emails, so many inbound for each app, for each requisition that I'm searching for. My LinkedIn inbox is bloated. So it might even that decision to look at your resume might not even make it to my consciousness, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Right. So part of it is like how do you present it? Right. So maybe you present it through LinkedIn as a LinkedIn message. Maybe you present it as an email. Maybe if you can get the person's phone number or whatnot, maybe you present it as a text message. Maybe you present it as there's ways to prime the conversation, right? By engaging with maybe the recruiter's content, right? Or maybe if you have a mutual connection, you can drop that person's name in email. And so yeah, if you set a resume, so here's the thing. A lot of times, especially at the top of the funnel, I'm just using LinkedIn profiles as a proxy for resumes. So even if you sent a resume and it did get across my desk, so to speak, chances are I would go immediately to your LinkedIn profile and I would scan it for, a lot of times I scan for geography and then titles, current title, current company. Geography, current company, and title, it tells me so much, right? Geography is obvious. Current company tells me a lot. It tells me the kind of company you've been working for X amount of time. And because of that, I'll make some assumptions. And they're not hardline assumptions. But if you're coming from a company like Facebook versus a company like a no-name AI startup down the street, right? Those are two different animals, right? And especially if you've spent a long time at Facebook, I'll make some assumptions about the kind of culture that you would fit into. I'm just using Facebook as an example, right? Yeah. So the company tells me a lot. And again, that's not like set in stone, but when a recruiter's scanning, they're trying to get a feel for you as a candidate, right? So company tells me a lot. How long you've been there, and then title. Those are things that I look at.
Got it. So how important is the headline in LinkedIn? Because I keep hearing multiple things. Hey, in headline, you want to put the title that you're aspiring. And some are like, yeah, anywhere you have something in LinkedIn, they can scan it. So headline is more for optics, not for search. like how critical is it that my headline is appealing or search friendly for recruiters?
I think the headline should have kind of like what you're saying. The headline and then the about section, I think, should be written in a way that showcases what you do and who you do it for, right? And there's different ways to do that. I think the about section should be very easy to read. What I avoid as a recruiter is blocky paragraph prose content, right? It's just hard to read. But if you give me a few bullet points and if you write it in a way that's first person, that tells a story that captures, like captures the recruiter's attention, then you can suck them in. But if it's just a big blocky, I would avoid big blocky paragraph like text. I would talk about what you're looking for, right? In terms of like titles. I would talk about like many marquee accomplishments that you've had. So if you survey your career experience, depending on what you're going for, like the kind of role and the kind of company size, I would maybe list out 3, maybe 4 sort of marquee accomplishments that you think would resonate with somebody that would be hiring for the kind of position and for the kind of company that you're looking at.
Okay.
And and you guys are learning this in the NSA, right? Like you try to quantify your accomplishments, make it concrete. And there's different levels of quantifying your accomplishments, right? When you think about like salespeople, there's a lot of ways that salespeople can quantify. Like one way is like, oh, I was the #1 sales rep, right? And the next question is like, out of how many sales reps, right? And so when you think about the subsequent question that will come up, try to answer those. Okay, I was the #1 sales rep. Okay, what's the question? The next question is, well, out of how many sales reps? Out of 500. Wow, that's amazing. Or out of 1 sales rep, I was the #1 sales rep, right? And the next question is like, how long were you the #1 sales rep, right? And then what did it mean to be the #1 sales rep? Like how much revenue were you actually driving? And then how consistently did you do that? Right. And so these are the subsequent questions that come up when you're trying to quantify something. And I just like using the sales because, it's really dramatic when you see salespeople, somebody that does it well versus somebody that doesn't do it very well in terms of quantifying their accomplishments. It's like night and day. Right. And so if you can quantify your accomplishments and, use ChatGPT to help you get creative too. Right. Because some people, they hit that roadblock. It's like, oh, I was a designer. Right? I don't know how to quantify my accomplishments. Ask ChatGPT for help. It'll give you a lot of different ideas and ways that you can quantify. As an example, right? You can quantify your accomplishments by volume. Like I produced X amount of designs in X amount of time, Y amount of time, right? And I'm just making that up because maybe that's not important, right? Maybe it is important. But there's different ways that you can quantify, right? To really give and the whole point of quantifying is to make it concrete, to the interviewer, the recruiter, make it concrete and so that they can imagine how you would fit into their role, right?
And Eric, I know we are at time. Just want to ask one last question. I actually sent it in chat. So how do we showcase our portfolio? Like, what are the bare minimum that you expect or like hiring managers expect to see in a portfolio without sharing large details about architecture, like the design elements or strategy? Because I'm coming from a fintech, which is very regulated, and I don't want to attract any legal issues by, hey, we heard that you're sharing about our growth strategy. So I have only worked in regulated industries, whether it's insurance or fintech. So I'm like, other than my resume, where I am like talking about, I made changes to the architecture and had delivered 144 million incremental growth in less than 18 months. How else I can share like the portfolio? I'm just like, also, I am 7 years old to doing a job search. So things are so different now. It's completely different. I was assuming that I would grow old and not have to look for jobs, but here we are, right?
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
So coming from a recruiter's perspective, as far as a portfolio for portfolio's sakes, I don't think is maybe the right approach. For portfolio to give conversation pieces around the story that you're telling, I think is very helpful.
Okay.
Because and you think about, how you answer a question in an interview, right? There's different frameworks. And one of the most common is the STAR or the CAR, right?
Yeah.
The challenge or context, the action, and then the result, right? And so if you can integrate a conversation piece as part of that framework. And when I say conversation piece, that's what I'm referring to, like whatever you might have in your portfolio. That's like the conversation piece. Then that can help really bring your car, to life when you're telling that story. If you're doing that in an interview, like in a Zoom interview, you might be able to show a diagram or show a screenshot, whatever the case may be, when you share your screen in Zoom, right? That could be a way that you can sort of integrate that into your conversation. Another way to do it is like a standalone, right? Like we were talking about this earlier with Ryan, like if you have a link to a landing page that maybe showcases some of your work. And you can get creative in how you do that. But I think part of it is just making sure it's, if it's standalone, it needs to address some of the questions that you believe are going to be asked in terms of showcasing your work. And it tells that story. And if you're going to use it, if you're going to use a portfolio as part of a sort of an actual dynamic interview dialogue, and you could share it on your screen. So just make sure that whatever your portfolio is, it's sort of it works for the context of how it will be delivered. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, I mean, you have to kind of like to your point, and I think you're already doing this, is just respecting some of the boundaries with respect to NDA or any sensitive information.
Yeah. So when I was told like, hey, no relocation means you're out of job, I didn't even think about taking pictures or anything, because that's attracting issues down the lane. So I've worked long enough in compliance space. Don't want to mess up with anything.
Yeah. All right, I hope this helps you guys.
This was definitely helpful, Rick. Thank you for doing this.
For sure. I appreciate you guys' engagement and questions. I always like a smaller group because it's a little bit more interactive.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And
All right,
I'm
guys.
looking forward to the pendulum swinging to the other side.
Yeah.
Crossing my
It may take some
fingers.
time.
I'm crossing my fingers. I think the pendulum will swing. This AI thing, though, man, is crazy. I think at some point people are going to give up and they're just going to retire. And by virtue of that, it'll cause the pendulum to swing a little bit because the talent market will shrink. But I don't know. AI is a crazy thing. Who knows where we'll be in 5 years?
I was using AI to search about AI. Is this similar to how the Rust Belt happened in that whole Great Lake area? Anyways, it's interesting.
Just hang in there, you guys. Like, I think the big thing is just, this is an opportunity for all of us, I think, to kind of reinvent ourselves and to, really ask ourselves, like, what is our craft and how can I use AI to augment my craft? And how can I use AI to even tell my story and how to market myself, And so using it first and foremost as part of the job search. And then maybe secondly, maybe more importantly, using it as part of your own craft, your own discipline, I think will be really the way to go. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
all right, guys.
Yeah.
I hope to see you guys next week. Talk to you guys soon.